Long before humans crossed the quiet dark between stars, the galaxy lived by old rules meant to stop endless sorrow. Councils rose and fell, yet one promise stayed firm: never harm the young of another kind. It was not kindness alone, but fear of what grief could awaken when hope was taken too soon on distant halls. Elders taught this law to every voice and every mind, until it felt like breath itself, forgotten only by those who chased power over care. Humanity arrived later, still learning names of stars and trust, with open hands and gentle hope for Alan. The frontier world where humans learned to share sky with others, children laughed and shared gardens, teachers like Park Yuna watched them grow, while translators like Choi Hannah bridged quiet fears. Adults believed the first rule made them safe, yet small signs of strain moved beneath polite meetings. The council spoke softly and delayed answers, trusting time to smooth mistakes. Meanwhile, messages crossed light years carrying worry that felt like whispers before storms. Children drew stars on paper, dreaming of tomorrow, and parents smiled, though shadows grew behind their calm faces as trust thinned without warning signs or alarms. Long before humans crossed the quiet dark between stars, the galaxy lived by old rules meant to stop endless sorrow. Councils rose and fell, yet one promise stayed firm: never harm the young of another kind. It was not kindness alone, but fear of what grief could awaken when hope was taken too soon. On distant halls, elders taught this law to every voice and every mind, until it felt like breath itself, forgotten only by those who chased power over care. Humanity arrived later, still learning names of stars and trust, with open hands and gentle hope for all. On the frontier world where humans learned to share sky with others, children laughed and shared gardens. Teachers like Park Yuna watched them grow, while translators like Choi Hannah bridged quiet fears. Adults believed the first rule made them safe, yet small signs of strain moved beneath polite meetings. The council spoke softly and delayed answers, trusting time to smooth mistakes. Meanwhile, messages crossed light years carrying worry that felt like whispers before storms. Children drew stars on paper, dreaming of tomorrow, and parents smiled, though shadows grew behind their calm faces as trust thinned without warning signs or alarms. Long before humans crossed the quiet dark between stars, the galaxy lived by old rules meant to stop endless sorrow. Councils rose and fell, yet one promise stayed firm: never harm the young of another kind. It was not kindness alone, but fear of what grief could awaken when hope was taken too soon. On distant halls, elders taught this law to every voice and every mind, until it felt like breath itself, forgotten only by those who chased power over care. Humanity arrived later still, learning names of stars and trust, with open hands and gentle hope for all. In the frontier world where humans learned to share sky with others, children laughed and shared gardens. Teachers like Park Yuna watched them grow, while translators like Choi Hannah bridged quiet fears. Adults believed the first rule made them safe, yet small signs of strain moved beneath polite meetings. The council spoke softly and delayed answers, trusting time to smooth mistakes. Meanwhile, messages crossed light years carrying worry that felt like whispers before storms. Children drew stars on paper, dreaming of tomorrow, and parents smiled, though shadows grew behind their calm faces as trust thinned without warning signs or alarms. Long before humans crossed the quiet dark between stars, the galaxy lived by old rules meant to stop endless sorrow. Councils rose and fell, yet one promise stayed firm: never harm the young of another kind. It was not kindness alone, but fear of what grief could awaken when hope was taken too soon. On distant halls, elders taught this law to every voice and every mind, until it felt like breath itself, forgotten only by those who chased power over care. Humanity arrived later still, learning names of stars and trust, with open hands and gentle hope for all. On the frontier world where humans learned to share sky with others, children laughed and shared gardens. Teachers like Park Yuna watched them grow, while translators like Choi Hannah bridged quiet fears. Adults believed the first rule made them safe, yet small signs of strain moved beneath polite meetings. The council spoke softly and delayed answers, trusting time to smooth mistakes. Meanwhile, messages crossed light years carrying worry that felt like whispers before storms. Children drew stars on paper, dreaming of tomorrow, and parents smiled, though shadows grew behind their calm faces as trust thinned without warning signs or alarms. Long before humans crossed the quiet dark between stars, the galaxy lived by old rules, meant to stop endless sorrow. Councils rose and fell, yet one promise stayed firm: never harm the young. Of another kind, it was not kindness alone, but fear of what grief could awaken when hope was taken too soon on distant halls. Elders taught this law to every voice and every mind, until it felt like breath itself, forgotten only by those who chased power over care. Humanity arrived later, still learning names of stars and trust, with open hands and gentle hope for Alon. The frontier world where humans learned to share sky with others. Children laughed and shared gardens. Teachers like Park Yuna watched them grow, while translators like Choi Hannah bridged quiet fears. Adults believed the first rule made them safe, yet small signs of strain moved beneath polite meetings. The council spoke softly and delayed answers, trusting time to smooth mistakes. Meanwhile, messages crossed light years, carrying worry that felt like whispers before storms. Children drew stars on paper, dreaming of tomorrow, and parents smiled, though shadows grew behind their calm faces as trust thinned without warning. Signs or alarms. Long before humans crossed the quiet dark between stars, the galaxy lived by old rules, meant to stop endless sorrow. Councils rose and fell, yet one promise stayed firm: never harm the young of another kind. It was not kindness alone, but fear of what grief could awaken when hope was taken too soon. On distant halls, elders taught this law to every voice and every mind, until it felt like breath itself, forgotten only by those who chased power over care. Humanity arrived later, still learning names of stars and trust, with open hands and gentle hope for Alon, the frontier world where humans learned to share sky with others. Children laughed and shared gardens. Teachers like Park Yuna watched them grow, while translators like Choi Hannah bridged quiet fears. Adults believed the first rule made them safe, yet small signs of strain moved beneath polite meetings. The council spoke softly and delayed answers, trusting time to smooth mistakes. Meanwhile, messages crossed light years, carrying worry that felt like whispers before storms. Children drew stars on paper, dreaming of tomorrow, and parents smiled, though shadows grew behind their calm faces as trust thinned without warning signs or alarms. Long before humans crossed the quiet dark between stars, the galaxy lived by old rules, meant to stop endless sorrow. Councils rose and fell, yet one promise stayed firm: never harm the young of another kind. It was not kindness alone, but fear of what grief could awaken when hope was taken too soon on distant halls. Elders taught this law to every voice and every mind, until it felt like breath itself, forgotten only by those who chased power over care. Humanity arrived later, still learning names of stars and trust, with open hands and gentle hope for all. In the frontier world where humans learned to share sky with others, children laughed and shared gardens. Teachers like Park Yuna watched them grow, while translators like Choi Hannah bridged quiet fears. Adults believed the first rule made them safe, yet small signs of strain moved beneath polite meetings. The council spoke softly and delayed answers, trusting time to smooth mistakes. Meanwhile, messages crossed light years, carrying worry that felt like whispers before storms. Children drew stars on paper, dreaming of tomorrow, and parents smiled, though shadows grew behind their calm faces as trust thinned without warning signs or alarms. Long before humans crossed the quiet dark between stars, the galaxy lived by old rules, meant to stop endless sorrow. Councils rose and fell, yet one promise stayed firm: never harm the young of another kind. It was not kindness alone, but fear of what grief could awaken when hope was taken too soon on distant halls. Elders taught this law to every voice and every mind, until it felt like breath itself, forgotten only by those who chased power over care. Humanity arrived later, still learning names of stars and trust, with open hands and gentle hope for Olan, the frontier world where humans learned to share sky with others. Children laughed and shared gardens. Teachers like Park Yuna watched them grow, while translators like Choi Hannah bridged quiet fears. Adults believed the first rule made them safe, yet small signs of strain moved beneath polite meetings. The council spoke softly and delayed answers, trusting time to smooth mistakes. Meanwhile, messages crossed light years, carrying worry that felt like whispers before storms. Children drew stars on paper, dreaming of tomorrow, and parents smiled, though shadows grew behind their calm faces as trust thinned, without warning signs or alarms. The day began quietly on Aurelianine, the kind of morning where the sun spreads soft light over fields and buildings, and humans moved through the streets with the easy calm of a world that believed it was safe. Children ran with small laughter between gardens and classrooms, and teachers like Park Yuna walked beside them, speaking in gentle voices, reminding them of the shapes of letters and the names of planets beyond the sky. The air smelled of warm soil and fruit growing in the small farms that lined the streets. Humans were still learning how to live among other species on this world, and every sound and every glance was measured by care and trust. The council had promised protection, and for a time it seemed the promise was enough. Parents left their children to play and work and study, knowing that rules older than empires stood firm enough to hold them safe. Yet beneath the calm, humans felt a faint tremor of unease, a sense that decisions made far away could reach down at any moment to disturb their quiet lives. Choi Hannah noticed at first when messages from the council arrived with polite words that seemed heavy with delay. The words said there were concerns about resources and control, and that a review was in process, but nothing in the messages felt like reassurance. It felt like waiting for an answer that might never come, as if the galaxy itself held its breath while humans continued to live and grow and dream. The children did not notice the tremors of politics or the whispers of distant councils. They painted skies with chalk and drew spaceships in the dirt. They made small forts of stones and sticks and told each other stories of stars they would one day visit. Humans had built colonies on worlds like Aurelian 9 because they trusted themselves to care for one another, because they believed in kindness and in patience and in the soft power of learning and friendship. Park Yuna watched them and felt a swelling of pride and fear. At once she taught letters and numbers and songs, and she reminded them to respect all beings. She reminded them that their laughter was a gift, and that their hearts were precious, and that nothing in the galaxy should harm them. Choi Hannah worked beside her, translating and explaining the habits of other species so that humans could understand and be understood, so that no small mistake could grow into tragedy. Yet the sense of unease lingered in Choi Hannah's chest like a shadow, waiting at the edges of a warm light, and she could not shake it when the first ships arrived above Aurelian 9. The children thought them magnificent. They gleamed silver in the sunlight and moved with precision and power. Humans stared upward, with eyes wide with wonder, and teachers like Park Yuna felt a knot in their stomachs that told them something was wrong. The ships were not here to celebrate. They moved like winded predators, though they were cloaked in the colors of peace. No warning bells rang, no cries were given, and still the humans watched and waited. Choi Hannah ran through the school halls, gathering children and parents together, speaking quickly and softly, trying to explain what was happening without frightening them. Yet the fear was already in the air. It slipped into the hearts of humans like ice and water, and it touched every hand and every face. The council had promised protection, yet it seemed the promise had been forgotten or ignored, or perhaps never meant to be kept at. All the first raids were not brutal in the way humans had seen in stories. They were precise and quiet, measured to take control without chaos. The children were small, and humans had always believed their smallness protected them. That belief now met reality. Humans tried to gather the children into safe rooms, into hidden chambers, but the invaders moved faster than humans could understand. They took the young with care, not cruelty, but still the heart of every human broke, watching children separated from parents, watching teachers like Park Yuna's stand in the path of fleets. She could not stop trying, only to protect, only to give herself so that others might survive. Choi Hannah clutched her own hands as she recorded everything, recording the faces of frightened children, recording the sorrow of humans caught in a world that had promised safety and yet could not deliver it. The sky above glowed with the light of engines and shadows of control, and humans watched the terrible calm of it and understood in the deepest places of their hearts that laws written by councils could fail them at any moment. The council received word and paused to consider their response. The footage that Choi Hannah sent was clear beyond argument: children taken and teachers injured, and yet the council deliberated. The words that came back to humans were measured, polite, filled with phrases that felt like excuses. They claimed the incident was regrettable and unverified, and called for patience. They did not act. They did not move to rescue. They did not even say they were sorry. They measured the events through the lens of politics and alliances and faraway needs, and failed to see the beating hearts in every small human that had been taken. The humans on Aurelian felt the betrayal. Deeply, it was not just fear or sorrow that moved through them, but the quiet rage of those who had been told that trust was enough and found that it was not. Park Yuna lay across the floor of a quiet room, holding children close, whispering songs and names and stories she had told them in brighter times. She told them that the stars still watched them, that hope was not gone, that humans were strong in ways the galaxy did not always understand, that promise was enough for the moment to hold them together, even as her own hands shook, even as the light outside grew strange with shadows and unfamiliar engines. Children looked at her eyes and saw courage even as they trembled and cried, and Choi Hannah translated the hope for them, translating not only words, but the unspoken messages of human hearts, the belief that even when everything seemed lost, there was a chance to endure, there was a chance to live and be loved outside. The city, the ships moved in patterns designed to control roads. In fields and communications, every step calculated, every choice measured. Yet humans found ways to hide small signals, ways to whisper messages across small networks, ways to send hope in letters and drawings that might reach others far away. Kim Seojin traced patterns of the raids across maps and screens, analyzing every choice the invaders made, searching for weakness, for mercy, for any path to rescue children and teachers. She found some clues, small errors in timing, small gaps in patrols, small chances that the human mind could grasp. While others saw only precision and power, it was painstaking work, and every moment weighed heavily because each second meant another human child might be taken further from safety. Parents waited in hidden rooms and farms and workshops, their hands empty and hearts full of fear. They could not intervene against ships and weapons, and yet they clutched small hands and whispered promises. They had learned from generations of human care. "You will be safe," they said. "We are coming for you." They repeated it not once, but again and again, until their own voices became steady with belief, even when the world felt as if it might tear apart. Humans learned quickly that hope was not abstract, but something you carried in your body, in your heart, in your voice, in your eyes, and that each small act of care could ripple across fear and uncertainty. As the council delayed their judgment, and even as the sky above Aurelian 9 glowed with silent engines, humans found strength in one another. They held hands and sang songs in low voices, and told stories of courage from their own history and from the stars they had begun to learn. The children learned too, and perhaps for the first time they understood that rules alone could not protect them, that law was only strong if hearts believed in it, and that humans were capable of both care and fierce determination. The warmth of human connection became a shield no invader could see, yet it held them together against the cold movements of machines and commands. As the hours stretched into a long and quiet night, Choi Hannah continued her records, writing and transmitting what she could to others who might act to help, who might see the truth of the situation. It was not revenge she wanted, but remembrance and action, and the assurance that these events would not be erased or ignored. Humans waited in hidden rooms and empty classrooms and abandoned workshops, yet they spoke to one another and reminded each other that they had always survived because they worked together, because they never gave up, even when the rules of others failed them. When light returned to Aurelian 9, the children drew new pictures of stars they hoped to visit one day, and teachers reminded them that even in dark times, there could be beauty, and that laughter was a gift, even when it felt fragile. Choi Hannah translated these lessons for alien settlers and humans alike, explaining that small hearts held enormous courage, that humans could endure great sorrow and still care for one another, that protection was not always given, but could be chosen and shared by all who loved and watched over one another. The council may have been silent, but humans spoke loudly, with every hand held, every story told, every song sung, every drawing shared across walls and doors and quiet gardens and In that human way of being small and persistent, they built a quiet resistance, not with violence, but with presence, not with fear, but with care. Each day they held children close, reminded them of their names, of their worth, of their future. Each day they prepared secretly for a time when help could arrive, when the council might realize that human hearts were not fragile at all, that human love and determination could not be measured in politics or delays. They learned the depth of their own courage, and the depth of the promise that humans make to one another, that children would be protected at any cost, known only to those willing to stand together quietly and without complaint. Hours and days moved in this careful balance. Humans found small victories in keeping some children safe in hiding, in teaching them and speaking truth to one another, even when the council ignored the cries. They found hope in small gestures and courage in every heartbeat of every child they held. They understood that the first rule had been broken, but they also understood that humans had something stronger than rules and stronger than fleets and engines and distant councils. They had each other and the unshakable belief that children would not be abandoned. That belief spread quietly but firmly through hidden rooms and empty streets, through whispered songs and stories, through eyes that never stopped watching the sky, and each other they waited and they hoped and they prepared to show the galaxy that humans would not be powerless, even when the rules failed them. Every night, Choi Hannah wrote letters she could not send, yet each word was a promise that the events would be remembered, that the children would be remembered, that those who trusted power over care would not forget the lesson of human hearts. She looked at the stars and imagined ships far away, imagining that someday those ships would face humans who had learned not to break each other, but to defend every small life with unyielding devotion. Every small room became a fortress of courage, every whispered story a thread in a fabric of protection. Every hand held a promise, every song a quiet declaration that humans would endure and survive. Park Yuna moved from room to room, teaching children, teaching adults, teaching even herself, that courage was not only in action, but in patience and presence, that love was not weak, but unstoppable, that humans could endure sorrow without giving in to despair, and that every heartbeat mattered, and every small life mattered. Most of all, the city of Aurelianine became a place of hidden bravery, a quiet garden of care and persistence, where every moment was a test and every small victory a triumph against the cold and indifferent universe. Humans learned in these days more than numbers or letters or histories. They learned the power of hope, the power of presence, and the strength of protecting each other when others could not or would not do. So Choi Hannah recorded every face, every name, every small story, hoping that someday the world would understand what humans had endured and what humans were capable of. She recorded not only suffering, but courage and gentleness and stubborn care for the smallest among them. She recorded laughter and tears and whispered songs and the quiet moments when humans held each other without words and without expectation. Each record was a seed of memory, a declaration that even in failure of rules humans could rise, and that their small hearts were not fragile but infinite in the depth of their care. The council continued to delay, and the invaders continued to take what they believed they could control, yet humans on Aurelianine did not despair. Humans held children, and held stories, and held each other, teaching that even in broken systems, love and protection could flourish. That even when adults in distant halls ignored the first rule, humans could make it real by every choice, by every heartbeat, by every song sung in hidden rooms and quiet gardens. The city breathed with small acts of care, with courage made of presence and attention, with the unshakable belief that children would survive and flourish because humans had chosen to protect them, not because they had to, but because they would not let anything stop them even. As the sun set on Aurelianine and the quiet of night spread over rooftops and fields, humans remained vigilant and caring and tireless. Even as fear pressed against them, they sang and spoke and held each other, teaching every child that protection came not from laws alone, but from hearts willing to act. That strength came not only from weapons or fleets, but from every small human choice that chose care over fear, that chose presence over abandonment. Humans waited and hoped and nurtured each other in the shadow of engines and distant authorities, showing that even in broken promises, the power of human love and attention could not be undone. They waited for the moment when the world might see what humans were capable of, when trust was betrayed yet. Hearts remained unbroken. The message arrived slowly at first, as if the light itself carried hesitation. It traveled across stars and years, and yet it moved faster than the humans on Aurelia 9 could imagine. The images Choi Hannah had sent showed children taken from classrooms, hands held in fear, eyes wide with questions they could not yet speak in words, adults struggling to protect them, and teachers standing in front of engines and ships that should have been impossible to stop. The council looked at these images and listened to reports and debated quietly for weeks, far away from the humans who lived and breathed the consequences of their silence. The humans waited, knowing that every moment the council delayed, every day that passed without action, could change the lives of children forever. They waited with hope and fear and patience that was itself a kind of courage. On Earth, humans did not wait idly. They did not pause to ask if the council would act or if other species would intervene. They prepared quietly and carefully for a response that had been planned. Long before the first colonies had been built, Lee Daejin studied maps and systems and signals of the galaxy and understood the networks of travel and trade and the hidden paths that only humans had used in secret for years. The humans had fleets that the galaxy believed were small and insignificant fleets that could not compete in open conflict, but fleets that could move with precision and speed unseen by those who assumed humans were weak or slow. They did not prepare for war as others understood it. They prepared for protection, for retrieval, for the quiet enforcement of their own rules that no one had taught, no one had expected. Kang Ji-soo received the images as well, and her hands did not shake as she studied them. She saw the faces of humans caught in impossible circumstances and felt the deep certainty that humanity could not rely on the council to act. They had taught humans to believe in rules older than empires, and yet the rules had failed. They had taught humans to trust and to hope, and yet the trust was betrayed. Jisoo did not speak in anger. She spoke in calm clarity, delivering a message that would echo across the galaxy and reach the ears of those who thought humanity small and weak. Her message was simple and unyielding. Humans do not negotiate when children are harmed. Humans do not wait when trust is broken. Humanity moves. The first human fleets appeared quietly, not in fleets that gleamed across the skies, but in movements that were precise and careful and visible to the naked eye. The ships moved across the space between Aurelianine and other worlds, positioning themselves where they could act, where they could protect, where they could retrieve. Every system had been mapped, every star counted, every possibility considered. Kim Seojin and Choi Hannah worked together, tracing the movements of the invaders, understanding the patterns, the gaps, the schedules. Humans understood the limits of technology, but also the limits of those who thought humans could be contained. They used every tool they had and every mind they could call upon to prepare a response that would not be rash, but perfect in its timing, in its intention, and in its care on Aurelian. Archeona continued to teach and comfort children, even as fear pressed on them, even as every hour brought the knowledge that those who had promised safety had failed. The children drew pictures of stars they hoped to visit one day. They whispered names of friends and planets they would see. They repeated the words of their teachers and their parents, holding tight to the promise that humans would not abandon them. They did not understand fleets and engines. They did not understand politics or councils, but they understood care. They understood presence. They understood that someone was working tirelessly to bring them home. They trusted because they had learned to trust in humans, because they had been loved and protected. Messages from Earth began to arrive, not as demands, but as assurances. Humanity did not speak of punishment in words that could inflame or frighten. They spoke of certainty of action, of the inevitability of protection. They spoke calmly to the council, to other species, to anyone who had assumed that humans could be contained, and told them that humanity would act for their children. Humanity would not wait. Humanity would not negotiate. Humanity would not forget. The words were not loud, yet they carried weight deeper than the councils or fleets could measure. They were carried in the certainty of human hearts and the networks of human minds, in the small acts of preparation that had been invisible to the galaxy for decades. The children of Aurelianine waited in hidden rooms and safe houses, unaware of the movement of fleets above and beyond the stars. They held hands and whispered prayers and repeated the lessons of teachers and parents. They drew ships and suns and stars and planets as if drawing hope itself into being. Their laughter was quiet and careful, but it existed even in fear. Their tears were not silent, and yet they were not despairing, because humans around them held them and loved them, promised that they would not be left behind. The quiet courage of children became a mirror for the adults, who loved them, reminding humans that hope could be strong and unyielding even when the world seemed uncertain. Choi Hana recorded every moment for memory, for evidence, for the understanding of the galaxy. She wrote down not only names and faces, but the emotions. The quiet courage, the whispered promises, the songs, and the stories, and the gentle actions that humans understood to be more powerful than fleets or threats or distant councils. She recorded how humans comforted one another, how they taught one another, how they held one another. She recorded the belief that protection was not just a rule, but a choice that humans made every moment, every breath, every heartbeat. The record was quiet, but it was deep, and it was true, and it was unshakable. When the human fleets began to move across the galaxy, they did not seek vengeance, they did not seek conquest. They moved with precision to reclaim what had been taken, to protect what was precious, and to make clear that humans were not fragile, that the trust of humans was not negotiable, and that children would be protected at all costs. Each movement of a ship, each calculation of trajectory, each coordination between teams was done with care. Humans understood the consequences of rash action. They understood the power of control. They understood that the world could misread force, and yet they acted with perfect clarity in their mission to retrieve and protect. And ashore, parents on Aurelia 9 whispered quietly to children about the approaching fleets, about hope and safety, though they could not yet explain everything. The promise: humans will come, humans will protect, humans will not leave. They taught the children to hold tight to one another, to trust and love and care too. Understand that bravery was not only an action, but an endurance and patience. The children repeated the words they learned them, not as threats, not as fear, but as songs of certainty, songs of faith, songs of the quiet strength that humans had built across generations. Chem Seojin coordinated communications between Earth and Aurelianine, tracking movements of every ship, every patrol, every window of opportunity. She understood that humans had long been underestimated, that humans had hidden strength not in size, but in thought and heart, in strategy and care. Every calculation was layered with intention to protect, not to destroy. Every signal sent was a promise that humans kept their word. Their children were their focus, and their children were their strength. The galaxy would come to understand this, not through threat, but through the quiet and unshakable certainty of Action Park. Yuna moved through hidden classrooms, whispering lessons, reminding children of their names, of their worth, of their right to be safe. She held small hands and reassured hearts. She spoke of stars and hope and the power of care. Children repeated her words, speaking them into walls and floors and gardens, so that the echoes carried through hidden spaces. The power of these words was not in volume, but in their truth, each syllable a paea, brick in the fortress of human courage that had already begun to rise quietly around them. The children learned that waiting could be an act of strength, and that hope could be cultivated as carefully as any garden. Choi Hannah continued to record and transmit information, understanding that memory itself could be protection, that witness could be shield, that documenting courage could preserve it and amplify it across the stars. Her fingers moved quickly, her mind aware of every detail, every shadow, every heartbeat. She saw the stories of humans waiting patiently, of humans preparing quietly, of humans holding fast to the promise that children would not be left. Became her narrative. Her narrative would be known across the galaxy, a reminder that humans are not small and weak, but careful, deliberate, and unshakable when protecting what they love. As the fleets closed the distance, humans on Aurelian felt the quiet pulse of assurance through every whispered word, every gentle touch, every repeated song of protection. They felt the certainty of return, of safety, of promise, kept, of hearts acting as one. Our lessons became living proof that patience and courage could exist together, that action and care were not opposites, but companions that humans understood deeply and naturally children whispered names of teachers, parents, siblings, and each other, holding tight to hearts that would soon be reunited. The quiet courage of waiting became as real as the engines moving. Across the sky and the distant signals carried by light, the Council finally received the undeniable proof that humanity would act not in haste, not in anger, but in certainty. The images of fleets moving in precise formation, the calculation of every possible path, the coordination of hidden human minds revealed that underestimation had been a grave error. That humans who appeared small and quiet could act decisively when their children were at stake. That humans did not need permission or validation. To enforce the first rule themselves, they did not ask, they did not plead. They simply moved in unshakable certainty that those who harmed children would find humans. Unavoidable messages from Kang Jisoo reached every species in the galaxy with a clarity that resonated deeper than words could convey. Humans were not vengeful, they were protective. Humans were not aggressive. They were deliberate. Humans acted for their children with care, strategy, and certainty. Humans reminded the galaxy that breaking trust with the small and the innocent was a mistake that could not be ignored. They did not shout, they did not rage, they acted. They acted with every mind, every heart, every calculation focused on assurance and protection. This was humanity. At its purest, its most terrifying to those who misunderstood it, and its most beautiful to those who were protected by it, parents. And teachers on Aurelia 9 prepared children to receive the fleets with quiet joy and whispered reassurance. They told stories of distant stars, of heroes and ordinary humans who had acted not for glory but for love. They reminded the children that they were never alone and that humans across space were moving to keep every promise that had ever been made. To protect them, the children listened and learned that bravery could be quiet, that hope could be patient, and that love was not weak but infinitely strong. They drew stars and ships and planets, imagining the arrival of friends who had already begun to move toward them, and felt their hearts lift with anticipation and trust joy. Hannah recorded the arrival and preparation of every ship, every calculation, every small adjustment, every silent communication. She wrote not only to prove humanity's power but to honor the hearts and minds that had worked tirelessly in hidden rooms and quiet corners. She documented the courage and care that had not been visible to the galaxy until this moment that had built. Quietly in every classroom, every hidden garden, every whispered song, she understood that the story of human hearts to travel farther than fleets, farther than weapons, farther than any council edict, because it was true and unshakable and built from Kara's. The first ships began to appear in the system surrounding Aurelia 9. Children held hands and repeated words of hope. Teachers whispered that every heartbeat mattered and that patience and courage were the most powerful tools. Humans understood that these moments were part of a larger truth, that action without care could destroy and that care without action could fail. That is why they prepared for both. They watched the skies and counted the stars and believed in the power of human hearts to protect those who could not protect themselves. They believed in the promise that no child would be abandoned, that no heart would be left unshielded, and that humanity would always act when the smallest and most innocent were at risk. The council watched and understood. Finally, that human patience was not weakness, and that human preparation was not idle. Humans acted with deliberate precision with hearts, fully engaged with minds, fully alert with every action, focused on children and protection and restoration. Not vengeance, not conquest, only protection, and the quiet demonstration of what humans could do when laws were broken and promises ignored. Every system they approached felt the calm certainty of human intent, and every observer understood that. This was not chaos, but care measured with infinite patience and strategy. Park Yuna moved among the children, reminding them to breathe, to sing, to speak, to laugh quietly, to trust. Humans were teaching their young that even in the face of broken rules, the strength of love and presence could not be denied. Every smile, every touch, every whispered word was a brick in the fortress of human courage that had risen quietly across decades and distances. Choi Hannah recorded each of these moments for posterity, and for truth, and for the understanding of a galaxy that had underestimated humanity and would never again do so. Humans had shown that when children were harmed, patience turned to certainty, and certainty turned to action, and that action was always rooted in care. The first human fleets arrived near Aurelianine, moved to secure the paths and systems necessary to retrieve children safely and quietly. They did not attack beyond necessity. They did not seek glory or revenge. They focused on every calculation, every plan, every action to ensure children were returned safely. Teachers and parents and human allies coordinated, silently preparing for reunions that would be filled with tears, with laughter, with whispered songs, with held hands, with promises repeated and remembered. Humans understood that these moments of care and connection were more powerful than engines or fleets, more powerful than any council decree, more enduring than fear itself. Every child was taught to wait and trust. Humans had prepared for this moment for decades, teaching the value of patience and courage and presence. They whispered the names of loved ones, they held hands, they drew stars and planets, they sang songs, and repeated words of protection, each action a lesson in endurance, each heartbeat a proof of human strength, not in violence, but in love, not in conquest, but in care. The arrival of fleets would be marked not by war, but by quiet restoration, by the undeniable certainty of human hearts moved to protect those most vulnerable. The council finally understood too late that underestimating humans had been a mistake, that breaking trust with children was a mistake, that failing to act was a mistake. They saw the careful coordination of humans across space, the preparation, the strategy, the intelligence, the care, and understood that this was not aggression, but inevitability. Humans were acting not because they were angry, but because they had chosen to protect children, and when humans choose, they cannot be ignored. The message resonated across the galaxy that trust once broken could be restored not through negotiation, but through certainty, not through threat, but through the unyielding care of hearts fully engaged in protection. Choi Hannah prepared the children for the moment of reunion, reminding them to breathe, to smile, to trust. Humans understood that these reunions were more than simple meetings. They were a proof of human determination, a declaration that children were never weak, a reminder that patience and courage could exist together in a single heartbeat. Every touch, every word, every song would be remembered by the children and by all who watched and all who would learn that humans are not to be underestimated when the most innocent are at stake. The quiet preparation of humans across Aurelianine and beyond ensured that when fleets arrived, every action would be perfect in intention and in care. Park Yuna held the children and whispered stories of the stars and of home and of human hearts. She reminded them that courage could be quiet, that hope could be patient, that every heartbeat mattered, and that humans were always strongest when protecting each other. She reminded them that waiting was an act of bravery and that love and care were more powerful than fear. She reminded them that humans would always act when children were at risk, and that certainty and care were inseparable. She reminded them that they were never alone, and that the universe could test them, but could not break them. Every human fleet that moved across the galaxy carried the weight of centuries of care and preparation. Every calculation was made, to protect every movement was planned, to restore every action was intended to uphold the promise that humans would protect their children, and that no council or fleet could prevent them from doing so. Every child held in hidden rooms, every teacher, standing quietly in fear and hope, would soon understand the depth of human hearts and the certainty of human action. Every parent and ally coordinating silently across systems would soon see the proof that humanity could act decisively and kindly simultaneously, and that nothing would stop them from fulfilling their promise. The galaxy waited unknowingly, unaware that humans were moving with precision and care that had been built quietly for decades. Humans acted not with anger, not with haste, but with purpose and with love. Their children were the center of every calculation, every plan, every action. Every heart in the galaxy that had underestimated them would soon see that humans are not fragile. Humans are deliberate. Humans are unshakable when protecting those they love. When fleets approached Aurelianine, every eye would see the proof. Every whisper would become a declaration. Every small act of courage across decades would be realized in the certainty of human hearts and minds, focused on one undeniable truth. Children are to be protected and humans will act when they are at risk. The humans waited quietly on Aurelia 9, their eyes always on the skies as the distant hum of approaching ships began to vibrate through the very air that surrounded them. Children clung to the hands of teachers and parents, their small bodies trembling not from fear alone, but from anticipation. They had learned that hope was a living thing that could be nurtured and protected, and now that hope felt tangible. It moved across the planet in the form of ships arriving silently and carefully from systems that had once seemed impossibly distant. Humans had prepared for this moment for decades, teaching one another patience and courage, teaching that every small act of care was part of something greater, teaching that hearts aligned in love and attention could become as unshakable as the strongest fleet ever built. The children waited and watched with wide eyes, counting stars and listening to every small sound that spoke of return of protection and of safety. Park Yuna moved among them, quietly whispering words of comfort, telling them that they would soon see the faces of those who had promised to protect them. She reminded them of lessons about bravery. Not in fighting, but in waiting. She reminded them that the universe might seem big and indifferent, but that human hearts were vast and precise and full of care. She encouraged the children to breathe slowly, to hold tight to each other, and to trust that the people moving toward them carried not only fleets and plans, but the infinite patience and love of humans who had never forgotten a promise. Choi Hannah worked alongside her, noting every reaction, every small gesture, every expression that reflected the depth of understanding that children had about protection and care that they had learned. Even in hiding, Kim Seojin coordinated movements across the systems, mapping every possible obstacle, every patrol, every change in schedules. She understood that human power was not measured in engines or firepower alone, but in the precise attention to every detail, in every decision, in every quiet calculation. She coordinated the fleets as if moving pieces in a puzzle designed not for destruction, but for the safe return of children and the restoration of trust. Every signal sent was calculated, every pause accounted for. And yet behind every calculation was the human heart that would not let a child be left behind. Every mind involved in the coordination felt the weight of responsibility, the gravity of purpose, and the quiet certainty that humans could act when no one else would. The fleets arrived above Aurelia 9 and moved in careful formation. Their engines glimmered softly against the light of the planet below. Humans in the control rooms guided every movement with care, ensuring that no child would be endangered, ensuring that the paths of travel avoided harm, and preserved every small gesture of safety. They did not act in haste. They did not shout. They moved deliberately, with every calculation focused on the children they had come to protect. Parents and teachers on the ground felt the vibration of ships moving above them, and every heartbeat seemed to echo the pulse of hope that humans had been cultivating across decades. Children looked up at the sky and whispered names. They had kept secret whispered prayers. They had learned whispered songs that reminded them of home. Their small voices, intertwined with the wind that swept through hidden gardens and empty streets, carrying the quiet courage that humans had nurtured across years. They believed in the promise that humans would act in time, and they understood not only with thought, but with feeling that those moving toward them would not fail. They had seen care in the eyes of parents and teachers. They had learned it in whispered words and gentle touches. They had felt it in the quiet endurance that humans had practiced every Dotha. First reunions were quiet and filled with emotion. The children ran into the arms of parents and teachers, holding tight, refusing to let go until they felt fully certain that safety had returned. Park Yuna knelt on the ground with children surrounding her, arms full of small bodies and whispered words of encouragement and reassurance. She reminded them that even in the face of danger, the promise of human hearts could be trusted. She held each child with care, translating her calm into every gesture and every look so that they could feel the certainty of protection through her own presence. Choi Hannah documented every embrace, every tear, every smile, knowing that the record of human courage was as important as the action itself. Kim Seojin guided ships and teams to ensure that every hidden location was approached safely, that every path to the children was secure, that no one would be lost in the process. Humans had prepared for every scenario, anticipating errors and correcting Then before they could happen, every decision made by the fleet was measured not by aggression, but by the safety and well-being of every child and adult involved. It was a demonstration of the depth of human preparation, the attention to detail, the quiet patience that allowed humans to act decisively without causing unnecessary harm. Parents and teachers spoke softly to children, reminding them to take slow breaths, to trust, to believe that safety had returned. They repeated words of love and assurance over and over until every heartbeat in the room matched the calm certainty of humans who had prepared for this moment for decades. Every small gesture mattered, every whispered word mattered, every touch mattered, and each contributed to the unshakable proof that humans could protect those who could not protect themselves. The reunions became lessons not only in safety, but in the power of patience and care. The fleet moved carefully to neutralize any remaining threats without causing panic or harm. They worked quietly, removing obstacles, restoring communication lines, and making certain that the children could move freely without fear. Every action was calculated and every pause intentional to ensure that the focus remained on protection and care. Humans acted not out of anger, but out of responsibility and commitment to the first rule that had been broken, and that they had chosen to uphold. Themselves, they understood that true power lay not in destruction, but in precision, and in the ability to safeguard what was most precious. Children were brought together with their families and teachers. They laughed and cried simultaneously, the laughter bright and pure, and the tears filled with relief and love. Park Una held them all and whispered stories of stars, reminding them that even in dark times, hope could exist, that courage could be quiet, and that every human heart carried the strength to protect others. Choi Hannah translated and recorded every moment for understanding and remembrance, knowing that the documentation itself was a form of protection that would ensure that the story of human care would be remembered. Across generations, the adults who had coordinated from afar felt the weight of relief as they watched families reunite, as they saw the evidence of human patience and preparation realized in the smiles and tears of those they had come to protect. They understood that the success of the operation was not only in precision or planning, but in the attention to detail and care and the unyielding focus on safeguarding life. Every heart involved felt the satisfaction that comes not from victory over others, but from the restoration of trust and the protection of innocence. Children explored their surroundings, carefully reconnecting with familiar places and people, guided by teachers and parents who moved with gentle attention, ensuring that every step was safe, every hug, every whispered word, every song shared was a thread woven into the fabric of renewed security and understanding. Humans had taught their young that protection was an act of care, that safety was built from attention and love, that every action could be a reinforcement of promise and every choice a demonstration of responsibility. Park Una continued to move among the children, reminding them of lessons in patience and courage. She held their hands, guided their steps, reassured their hearts. She reminded them that every action taken by humans above and across the galaxy had been deliberate with care and intention. She reminded them that the first rule was sacred and that humans understood its importance. Beyond laws, beyond councils, beyond simple enforcement, it was a commitment of the heart that could never be broken by indifference or delay. Hannah documented the return of communications systems, the reopening of paths, and the careful coordination of families and fleets. She understood that the record of human action in this moment would serve as a testament not only to capability, but to the depth of human empathy, the precision of human preparation, the deliberate focus on care that had made this outcome possible. Every photograph, every note, every observation was a record of human hearts aligned in protection. Kim SCO Jin coordinated with distant command centers, ensuring that every child reached safely, every family reunited, every teacher accounted for. The calculations were quiet but precise, the adjustments subtle but effective. Each movement ensured that nothing was lost, and that humans could demonstrate their power not in aggression, but in the careful application of strategy. In attention to human life, the children felt the calm certainty of being protected in every step of their return to safety. Parents and teachers guided the children through the restored streets, the children holding hands, singing softly, laughing. Quietly crying softly of relief and love, the adults reminded them that the universe was vast and uncertain, but that humans had chosen to be vigilant. Humans had chosen to protect. Humans had chosen to act when the smallest and most vulnerable were. At risk every step through, familiar paths became a lesson in endurance and a proof of Care Park Una. Whispered stories of stars and home, reminding the children that their courage and patience had been important. Their trust had been justified, and that the humans who had acted were the living proof that promises made to protect would be kept. She reminded them that their laughter and tears and whispered words were part of a network of care that extended across planets, systems, and fleets. That every child was at the center of human attention and concern. Hannah continued to record everything, knowing that the documentation itself was a protection and a testament. She captured the small gestures, the quiet songs, the careful guidance, the whispered assurances, knowing that these moments of care and protection would be remembered and learned from. They were proof that when humans act for the protection of children, they act with precision, patience, and infinite care, not through anger or vengeance, but through deliberate and unshakable love. Kim Seo-jin coordinated the final retrievals, ensuring that all paths were clear, that every remaining obstacle was neutralized, and that all systems necessary for safe passage were restored. Every action was deliberate, every pause accounted for, every adjustment measured to ensure that children could move freely, safely, and without fear. The humans did not seek conflict or revenge. They sought the restoration of safety and the demonstration of the strength of human hearts, focused entirely on protection and care. Parents and teachers whispered to children, reminding them to breathe, to hold tight to one another, to trust, and to believe that safety had returned. They reminded them that the smallest acts of patience and courage had made this possible, that every song, every drawing, every whispered word had contributed to the network of protection. Humans had acted decisively and carefully, and the children were now able to experience the proof of that care firsthand. Park Una guided the children through gardens and classrooms, through streets and alleys, reminding them that hope and courage could exist even in dark times. She encouraged them to speak softly to one another, to share stories, to draw and sing, and to remember that every heartbeat mattered and every choice to care was powerful. She reminded them that humans acted because they loved, and because they had learned that protecting the most vulnerable was the truest measure of strength. Hannah continued to observe, record, and translate the stories of return, ensuring that the lessons of patience, courage, care, and protection were preserved. She understood that the moment was not only about reunions, but about demonstrating to every human and to every observer across the galaxy that when children were at risk, humans acted with deliberate precision and unshakable care. Kim Seo-jin monitored every remaining detail, making adjustments, ensuring that fleets returned safely, that communication lines remained open, and that children and adults could move freely and securely. Every step of the operation had been deliberate, every action measured, and every decision focused entirely on the protection of life. The success was not in confrontation but in restoration, not in fear but in the careful demonstration of human commitment to those who could not protect themselves. Children ran through restored streets, holding hands, laughing softly, crying softly, whispering songs and stories. Parents and teachers guided them, reminding them that every moment of patience had mattered, every heartbeat had mattered, every whispered word had mattered, every gesture of care by humans across the galaxy had culminated in this quiet demonstration of love and protection. The children understood that they had been held in the hearts of humans, even when apart, and that those hearts had guided fleets and calculations and strategies across light years to bring them home. Park Una knelt among them, holding them close, whispering of stars, hope, and courage, reminding them that even in the darkest times, humans could act decisively to protect those they loved. She reminded them that care was a force as strong as any fleet or weapon, and that patience and courage could shape outcomes more powerful than fear or indifference. Hannah recorded the calm restoration of communication systems, the careful coordination of fleets and families, the soft reunions, and the quiet songs and stories shared among children and adults. She understood that this documentation would teach the galaxy about human care and precision and patience. and that it would preserve the story of hearts acting imperfect. Alignment for protection. Kim, Seojin, continued to adjust and guide, ensuring that every child was accounted for, every teacher, every parent, every hidden location had been checked, and every path was secure. Every calculation was focused entirely on safety and restoration, not aggression. Every signal, every adjustment, every coordination was a quiet demonstration of human precision, patience, and deliberate care. The city of Aurelianine moved slowly back into normal rhythm, children playing softly, under watchful eyes, parents teaching quietly in hidden rooms, teachers guiding carefully every step. Humans had acted decisively and carefully to restore safety to children and families without anger, without revenge, but with precision, patience, and love. The children learned that protection could be deliberate and careful, that care could be unshakable, and that humans could act across light years to uphold promises to the most vulnerable. Park Yuna guided children through quiet gardens, reminding them that hope could be cultivated, that courage could be quiet, and that love and care could be stronger than fear. She reminded them that humans had acted not for power but for protection, and that their lives were proof that patience and careful action could create security even in uncertain times. Choi Hannah documented the restored systems, careful coordination, and the reunions. She understood that every observation, every note, every photograph captured the deliberate attention and infinite care that had allowed humans to act decisively to protect the most vulnerable. Humans had demonstrated that action could be deliberate, precise, and full of love, and that the galaxy would never again underestimate what humans could do when children were at risk. Fleets returned slowly to distant systems, having completed the mission of protection, not of conquest. The humans who coordinated every movement felt satisfaction, not in power, but in the quiet success of safeguarding lives. Every decision, every adjustment, every calculation had been made with care and love and patience. The children of Aurelianine had been returned safely, and humans had demonstrated across systems that protection could be deliberate, precise, and unshakable. Parents and teachers held children close, whispering words of reassurance, of hope, of love, reminding them that every small act of courage had mattered, that every heartbeat had been counted, and that every human involved had acted with deliberate care. Humans had shown that even in a galaxy that could be indifferent, humans could act with precision, patience, and unshakable love to protect those who could not protect themselves. Park Yuna moved among children and parents, reminding them of every lesson of courage, patience, care, and protection, teaching that waiting could be an act of bravery, that hope could be cultivated, and that love and attention were forces as strong as any fleet or engine. She reminded them that humans had acted decisively because they loved and because they had prepared quietly for decades to uphold every promise to protect the smallest and most vulnerable. Choi Hannah continued to record every quiet moment, every whisper, every song, every embrace. She understood that these records were more than history. They were proof that humans could act decisively, carefully, and with love, and that the story of human hearts acting in alignment for protection would resonate far beyond Aurelianine. Across systems and generations came Seojin finalized coordination, ensuring that every child, every parent, every teacher, every fleet had returned safely, and every system was secure. Humans had acted not out of anger, not out of vengeance, but out of deliberate care. Every decision, every action focused on the protection of life and the restoration of trust, and the demonstration that humans could be relied upon to act when the most vulnerable were at risk. Them. Children laughed and sang and ran through the streets holding hands, guided by parents and teachers, their hearts full of love and relief. Every whispered word, every gentle touch, every song shared became a lesson in courage, patience, and care. Park Yuna and Choi Hannah moved among them, holding hands, guiding steps, reminding them of every lesson and every proof that humans could act decisively to protect those they loved. The streets of Aurelian 9 echoed with quiet joy and the living proof that care, patience, and deliberate action could create unshakable safety. Humans on Aurelian 9 and across distant systems had acted with precision and love, demonstrating to themselves and to the galaxy that the first rule, when broken, could be upheld not by councils or decrees, but by the deliberate care of human hearts focused entirely on protection and restoration. Every child returned safely, every family reunited, every teacher accounted for, and every fleet coordinated perfectly. All as a result of patient preparation, deliberate action, and unshakable love. The first light of dawn stretched across Aurelianine and touched the rooftops and fields with soft warmth. Humans stirred quietly in the aftermath of the long nights. And the events that had changed everything, children awoke in the arms of parents and teachers and held on tightly as if the embrace itself could carry the certainty of safety through every heartbeat. Every street, every garden, every classroom bore the quiet echo of the days before the arrival of the human fleets and the return of those who had been taken. The planet itself seemed to breathe a slow, steady rhythm that matched the pulse of hope and relief in the hearts of everyone who had waited and acted and survived. The children moved carefully through hidden paths to spaces they had once occupied and discovered that the world had been held for them, that every step they took was watched over with care and attention. Humans had acted across the galaxy to make sure nothing would be lost, nothing would be forgotten, and every small life would be protected and nurtured. Park Una moved through the quiet streets, gathering children in her arms, reminding them to breathe and to smile, to sing softly to each other as she whispered of stars and planets and of distant friends who had been watching over them across the void of space. She reminded them that patience and courage had been their greatest tools, that even when everything seemed uncertain, their trust in humans had been justified, and that the promise to protect them had been kept. She walked slowly from classroom to garden to playground, holding hands, guiding steps, whispering reassurance and quiet lessons about the strength that comes from love and care. Choi Hannah followed with her records and notes, documenting every embrace, every smile, every small gesture of hope and courage, knowing that the story of this moment would be remembered and studied across generations, so that humans would never forget the power of deliberate care and protection. Children ran softly through fields and gardens with their friends, laughing quietly and crying softly from relief and joy. Their small voices carried across the air, blending with the morning breeze as they spoke names of parents, teachers, siblings, and each other. The reunions had been quiet and deliberate, but now the laughter and whispers filled spaces that had been empty and quiet. The humans who had coordinated the fleets and communications far away watched from control rooms and quietly smiled, understanding that every calculation, every preparation, every adjustment had led to this moment of quiet triumph. It did not need fireworks or declarations, because it was already alive in every heartbeat of every child and every adult who had been waiting for safety and reunion. Kim Seojin moved from terminal to terminal, guiding the final steps of coordination, making sure every family, every teacher, every child, every fleet had returned safely, and that all systems were restored. Every decision she made was deliberate, every calculation precise, every signal confirmed to ensure that nothing would be left to chance, that every step of restoration would honor the patience, courage, and care that humans had practiced for decades. She understood that human strength was not only in engines or ships or fleets, but in the deliberate alignment of minds, hearts, and attention in the service of protection, and that this moment proved to every observer that humans could act decisively, without haste, without anger, purely out of care. Parents whispered softly to children, holding them close, reminding them to take slow breaths, to trust the world around them, to believe in the certainty of protection that had been delivered across light years and systems. They reminded them that patience and courage had mattered, and that every act of care and love by humans had contributed to this outcome. They guided their steps through restored paths and gardens, through empty streets and classrooms, teaching their children to notice details, to observe care, to understand that every quiet gesture could carry immense meaning, and that every heartbeat mattered. Park Una moved among the children, reminding them of their names, of the value of each small life, and of the importance of courage and waiting. She held their hands, guided their steps, whispered stories of stars and hope, reminding them that even in dark times, humans could act decisively to protect what was most precious. She spoke softly of the care that had been extended across space, of the fleets that had moved with precision, and tension of the hearts that had not allowed a single child to be left unprotected. Children listened carefully, repeating words, softly whispering names, softly singing songs that reminded them of hope and resilience. Joy. Hannah documented every moment, the quiet reunions, the laughter, the soft tears, the songs and stories whispered among children and adults. She wrote, not only to preserve the memory of what had happened, but to teach future generations that the deliberate attention to detail and care can restore what seems lost, that patience, courage, and love are as powerful as any fleet or weapon, and that humans can act across unimaginable distances to uphold the promise to protect the smallest and most vulnerable. She captured every small gesture, every careful embrace, every quiet whisper that carried reassurance and certainty. Children explored the restored spaces, discovering familiar rooms and gardens and streets that had been held for them by the careful planning and attention of humans above and across the galaxy. They held hands, shared soft words and laughter, learning once again to trust the world that had seemed uncertain and dangerous, and now felt alive with protection and care. Teachers guided them every step, reminding them to observe the small signs of safety, to practice patience, and to understand that their courage and trust had been essential to the successful restoration of security. Kim Seojin coordinated final adjustments, making sure that every path, every communication line, every small detail had been accounted for, every signal confirmed, every route checked, every step measured to ensure that safety was absolute. The fleets returned slowly to distant stations, not in triumph, but in quiet assurance that their mission of protection had been successful, that every child had been returned, every teacher accounted for, every parent reunited, and every system restored. The humans who had acted far away and near understood that true power lay not in aggression or anger, but in deliberate care and preparation, and that this moment of restoration was a living testament to that truth. Park Yuna knelt among children, holding them close, whispering softly, reminding them that courage and patience could exist together, that hope could be nurtured, that love could be deliberate and unshakable. She reminded them that humans had acted across light years with precision and care to keep every promise, that every child mattered, and that no small life would be abandoned. The children listened intently, repeating softly whispered names, songs and stories reflecting their understanding that humans had acted decisively, but with infinite care and attention to protect them. Choi Hana moved through classrooms and gardens, documenting every moment of calm and restoration, every smile, every whisper, every song, every word she recorded became part of the legacy of care, patience, and deliberate action that had ensured the safety of children and families. Humans had acted not in haste, not in anger, but with unshakable certainty, focused on protection and restoration, and the record would preserve this truth forever as an example to all that human hearts aligned in care are as strong as any fleet or engine or command structure. Parents guided their children through restored streets and classrooms, teaching them quietly to breathe, to observe, to trust, to notice every small act of attention that had contributed to their safety. They reminded children that patience had been a form of courage, that every song, every drawing, every whispered word had helped humans act effectively across systems and light years, that every heartbeat mattered, and that humans could be trusted to act when children were at risk. The children repeated these lessons softly, carrying the words and understanding the meaning, not only with thought, but with feeling. Park Yuna whispered stories of stars, of planets, of distant friends across the galaxy, reminding children that patience and courage could create safety, that care could restore trust, that humans had acted decisively and deliberately to protect them, and that the love and attention that had guided every fleet, every calculation, every choice was proof that human hearts were strong and unshakable. She held small hands, guiding steps, whispering reassurance, teaching the children that waiting was a form of bravery and that hope could be cultivated and nurtured into safety and certainty. Choi Hana continued to record every moment, ensuring that the documentation preserved not only the facts of fleets and calculations, but the emotions, the courage, the patience and care that had ensured every child was safe. She documented small gestures, every embrace, every whispered word, every song that had been shared in classrooms, gardens, and streets. She understood that these records were more than history. They were proof that humans could act decisively, carefully, and with love, that this story of hearts aligned for protection would resonate across generations and systems. Kim Seojin adjusted final coordination, ensuring that every fleet, every parent, every teacher, every child, every system had been accounted for, that every pathway of safety was secured, every signal confirmed, every route double-checked, every communication verified to ensure that nothing would be overlooked. Humans had acted not to dominate or punish, but to restore and protect, and the success of their careful, deliberate actions demonstrated that precision, patience, and care could achieve what seemed impossible across vast distances and complex systems. The children laughed and sang, and whispered softly, holding hands and running through gardens and classrooms, guided by teachers and parents teaching one another about observation, patience, and care. They learned that every heartbeat mattered, that every whispered word and gentle touch could convey love and reassurance, that humans had acted decisively and with care to restore what had been threatened. The quiet streets of Aurelia 9, filled with soft voices, soft laughter, and soft tears of joy and relief, became living proof of the human commitment to protection and the power of deliberate attention aligned with love. Park Yuna guided children through restored spaces, reminding them that patience and courage were inseparable, that love and attention could be stronger than any fear or danger, that humans had acted with precision and care to ensure their safety. She encouraged children to sing softly, draw stories, write names of friends and planets, whisper stories, and repeat songs, reminding them that the quiet acts of bravery and care had created the restoration of safety that surrounded them. Choi Hana documented every gentle touch, every whispered word, every song, and every small gesture, knowing that the record of human care would teach generations to come about the power of patience, precision, and love. She captured the quiet reunions, the restored communications, and the calm confidence in every step taken by parents, teachers, and children. The documentation itself became a tool of protection, ensuring that the story of deliberate human care in action would be remembered and learned from across the galaxy. Kim Seojin monitored remaining adjustments, ensuring that all systems were restored, that fleets were positioned safely for return, that communication lines were open and secure, and that every child and adult could move freely and confidently. Humans had acted decisively and deliberately to restore safety, not through aggression or anger, but through the precise alignment of preparation, patience, and care. Their success proved to all observers that humans could act with perfect coordination and unshakable intent when protecting those most vulnerable. Parents guided children through restored gardens, streets, and classrooms, reminding them of the importance of observation, patience, and care. They whispered softly about every gesture, every song, every action that had contributed to the restoration of safety. They reminded children that their trust and courage had mattered, and that humans had acted across systems and light years with deliberate love and attention to ensure that every heartbeat was protected. Every whispered word and soft touch reinforced the lessons of deliberate care and courage. Park Yuna moved among the children, teaching them softly that patience and courage were a form of power, that hope could be nurtured, that love and care were stronger than any fear, that humans had acted across the galaxy to protect them, and that the demonstration of human hearts aligned in deliberate care was proof that protection could be absolute. She held their hands, guided their steps, whispered reassurance, and reminded them that every child was valued and that every heartbeat mattered. Choi Hana continued to document every soft sound, every whispered word, every gesture and song, recording the quiet power of human patience, courage, and deliberate care. She understood that these moments would serve as proof to all who observed that humans could act decisively across vast distances to protect the most vulnerable, and that love, attention, and preparation could achieve results far beyond expectations. The documentation would preserve the story of human hearts aligned in protection across Aurelianine and beyond. The the children explored the restored streets, gardens, and classrooms, holding hands, singing, whispering, drawing, and laughing softly. Parents and teachers guided them, ensuring that every step was safe, every path accounted for, and that every moment carried the lessons of patience, courage, and deliberate care, the quiet joy that filled. Aurelianine was proof that humans could act decisively across distances, using preparation, attention, and love to restore safety and trust without relying on anger or aggression. Park, Una whispered softly to children, reminding them that courage and patience could exist together, that hope could be cultivated, that love and attention could protect. More effectively than any fleet or weapon, she encouraged them to sing softly, draw stories of stars and planets, whisper names of friends and loved ones, and repeat songs of hope and reassurance. She reminded them that humans had acted decisively across light years to uphold promises and protect every child. Shoihana documented every reunion, every song, every soft touch, every whispered word, ensuring that the record preserved the story of deliberate human care and protection. She captured the restored communication lines, the organized fleets, the careful guidance of children, and the quiet confidence of parents and teachers, knowing that the documentation would serve as proof for generations that humans could act with precision, patience, and unshakable love to protect those who could not protect themselves. Kim Seo-jin ensured that every final adjustment was made, that all fleets and systems were secure, that all communication lines were functioning, and that every child, teacher, and parent was accounted for. Humans had acted not in aggression, but in deliberate care. Every calculation, every adjustment, every action focused entirely on the restoration of safety and protection. The success was proof that deliberate patience, precision, and care could achieve what seemed impossible. Across light years and complex systems, children laughed softly, ran gently, whispered softly, held hands, and explored restored spaces, guided by parents and teachers, reminding them of the lessons of patience, courage, observation, and care. They learned that every heartbeat mattered, that every whispered word, every gentle touch conveyed love and reassurance, that humans had acted decisively and with deliberate attention to restore safety. The quiet streets, gardens, and classrooms of Aurelianine became living proof of the power of human care, patience, and deliberate action. Park, Una guided children, whispering stories, reminding them that courage and patience were inseparable, that love and attention could be stronger than any fear or danger, that humans had acted decisively across light years to ensure their safety. She encouraged them to sing softly, draw right, whisper stories, and repeat songs, reminding them that every act of courage, care, and attention had created the restoration of safety surrounding them. Choi Hannah recorded every moment, capturing the quiet reunions, the restored systems, calm steps of children, parents, and teachers, and the soft songs and whispers that filled Aurelianine. She understood that the story of deliberate human care and action would teach future generations about the power of preparation, patience, and love. She documented the alignment of human hearts across distances, focused entirely on protection and restoration. Kim Seo-jin coordinated final confirmations, making sure every fleet returned, every path was secure, every child accounted for, every system restored. Humans had acted with precision, patience, and deliberate care to restore safety, not through aggression, but through the alignment of minds, hearts, and actions. Focused entirely on protection, the proof was visible in every child, every parent, every teacher, every restored space, every whispered word, every song shared across Aurelianine and the galaxy. The children laughed softly, whispered stories, sang quietly, ran holding hands, exploring restored gardens, streets, classrooms. Under the gentle guidance of parents and teachers, they learned that every heartbeat mattered, that every soft touch, every whispered word, every song and drawing conveyed care and reassurance, that humans had acted decisively across light years to restore safety and protect every life. The quiet, joy-filled Aurelianine was proof that humans could act with deliberate attention, patience, and love to ensure that no child would be abandoned. Park, Una moved among the children, guiding, holding, whispering, reminding them that courage and patience could exist together, that hope could be cultivated, that love and attention were forces stronger than fear, that humans had acted decisively and deliberately across the galaxy to protect them. She encouraged songs, stories, drawings, whispered names, and repeated words of hope, reminding children that every gesture of care, courage, and attention had contributed to the restoration of safety surrounding them. Choi. Hannah documented every sound gesture, song, whisper, smile, and embrace, ensuring the story of deliberate human care and protection would be preserved. She captured restored communication systems, fleets, guidance of children, quiet reunions, soft songs, whispers, laughter, and calm steps. She understood that the documentation itself was proof that humans could act decisively, carefully, and with love to protect those who could not protect themselves across Aurelianine and beyond the streets, classrooms, and gardens of Aurelianine filled with quiet laughter, whispers, songs, soft steps, children exploring, guided by parents and teachers. They learned that every heartbeat mattered, every gesture, every whispered word conveyed reassurance and care, that humans had acted decisively and deliberately to restore safety and protect every small life. The quiet joy and calm was proof that preparation, attention, patience, and love could achieve results far beyond expectations across light years and complex systems. Park Una whispered softly to children, teaching that courage, patience, love, and attention were inseparable, that hope could be nurtured, that humans had acted decisively and deliberately to protect every child. She encouraged soft songs, drawing stories, whispered names, repeated words, reminding children that the restoration of safety was the result of deliberate care, attention, and patience, aligned with love. Choi. Hannah documented every moment, recording every whisper, song, soft touch, gesture, smile, reunion, and step. She captured the restored communications, fleets, and guidance of children and parents. The documentation ensured that the story of human patience, precision care, and love aligned for protection be remembered across generations. And across the galaxy, Kim Seojin confirmed every fleet, every child, every path, every system had been accounted for. Humans had acted with deliberate care and attention, focused entirely on protection, restoration, and the station of the power of patience, courage, and love. Their success proved that human hearts aligned in care could act decisively across light years, ensuring safety and trust for the smallest and most vulnerable. The quiet joy of children, parents, and teachers across Aurelia was living proof that deliberate care and attention could achieve what nothing else could.